You're listening to a Comics XF podcast. Comics XF Interview Podcast, the show where two best friends talk about comics with the people who make them. I'm Dan Grote.
And I'm Matt Laswitz. And this week's guests are the creators of the Not Safe for Work fantasy comic She Comes with Magic, currently funding on Kickstarter, Christie Porter, and Phillip Sevy. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Hi.
So, first-time guests, what are some of the first comics that either of you remembers reading? Christie, why don't we start with you?
Oh, I was kind of a get dropped off at Barnes and Noble and immediately go to the comic book and manga aisle kid. This is probably a familiar experience for a lot of people, but
Sure.
Yeah, so I actually started off reading a lot of manga because that was what my local Barnes and Noble happened to stock. So I read Sailor Moon and Fruits Basket and a lot of girly stuff, but it wasn't too long before these, really cool collections and omnibuses of like X-Men on the other side of the aisle started to draw my eye. So I read, as a kid, some classic X-Men and then kind of fell out of comics. Like for a little bit, it was sort of I don't know. I felt like the anime kids were a little too weird for me and the comic book kids were all old, mean men. But then probably about 15 years ago, started reading comics again. So that's been a good experience.
Philip, how about you?
So I was around superheroes from the time literally my first memory involves superhero toys as a kid. So I got a handful of comics just stacked around. Parents would get me, but I was walking through a mall back in the early 90s and stumbled across a comic book store, and they had stacks of Chris Claremont and Jim Lee's X-Men #1. And I was already familiar with the X-Men. I think the X-Men 92 cartoon had been on about a year at that point. So I was a big fan. Mm-hmm. I was a big fan of Pride of the X-Men back in the day and was always waiting for episode 2. So I saw that and I was like, oh my God, X-Men #1, like there's an X-Men #1. It's going to be worth so much money is what I told my mom in order to get her to allow me to buy it. Bought X-Men #1. I took it home and I read it, and the Jim Lee art right there, then and there, where I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. And I became just kind of an ardent collector, especially X-Men, but not entirely. Pretty much from then on out, this is just some of the trades in our house right now. And 20 long boxes in the garage. Some 35 years later, here we are.
Now, Matt, I'm going to draw on your retail history there for a second. So for those who haven't heard this story, Matt used to work at a Borders. Kids ask your parents about Borders books and music. How much manga do you recall Borders having at the time?
When I started, which would have been 98, late 1998, not much. By the time I stopped working there regularly in 2004, by that point we had plenty. It was also, by that point the comic section was also larger, and also I moved to a larger Borders. The first Borders I worked at was a small Borders by the standards. It was one of the few mall Borders that wasn't an anchor.
Yeah.
But then I moved to one of the big full-size Borders, and there it was there was multiple bookcases of manga.
Yeah, it was like an incredible transitory time in publishing and retailing to go from the late 90s into early 2000s. Like Marvel kickstarted their trade program like they'd never had before. DC had already been doing a great job, but pushed further along, and then just an incredible expansion of manga available. Like there's like, I think a lot of my peers in comics, or our peers in comics, either came in through like early 90s Fox cartoons or the manga boom of the early 2000s. And I think so much of what we have today is owed to kind of that era and availability of books like never were before at that point.
Yeah, and I think I was really, lucky to be sort of born when I was, where I really like kind of hitting, that like 11, 12 years old, formative age when like really like local, like not like, bookstore shelves are really getting packed with more comics and more manga. So I really got to benefit from that as a kid.
Oh yeah, I mean, I starting to work at Borders in '98. I just got Vertigo. It was all the classic Vertigo.
Oh.
Like,
Oh yeah,
so
nice.
many walls of Vertigo over here.
Yeah, I'd already had Watchmen and Sandman, but Preacher, Transmet, 100 Bullets, all of that was like, and then I was working at Borders on and off while also working in a comic shop. So I was getting it from everywhere. But yeah, I mean, that was the time when the Ultimate line rolled out from Marvel, and that was when they realized, oh, these trades are a thing we should be doing regularly and not just the occasional reprint of the Dark Phoenix saga and some Todd McFarlane Venom Spider-Man stuff.
Hey, but that's how I got to read the Dark Phoenix saga, though.
Oh yeah, no, same. Like, I'm not going out and buying the freaking single issue of the Dark Phoenix saga. But it's fascinating. I was talking about this not too long ago about when that evolution started and how we got to the point where everything is written for the trade.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't necessarily write for the trade, how things can get broken up very strangely in modern comics now.
Is there like a flip side to that though, where, writing to the trade and forgetting to make like a single issue a complete story at the same time? I think there's probably a balance to be struck that a single issue still has to tell a story, but also cohesive enough that you can bind it together later with other issues.
Matt Fraction's current run on Batman is hitting that just right. Every issue is more or less self-contained with running subplots, very Claremontian in that respect.
I was going to say, I feel like the proto version of that is, we were just joking about the Dark Phoenix saga trade, but another one of those early Marvel trades was X-Men From the Ashes, which wasn't a cohesive story. It was just a bunch of really gorgeous Paul Smith drawn comics, and there was the larger Claremont, meta narrative, because there always was, but otherwise it was a bunch of random issues about, Logan's failed marriage to Mariko, and Thunderbird kidnapping some X-Men, and Scott and Madeline Pryor slow dancing.
Okay, you know what? I love it.
Yeah, and it's the same with one of the classic Batman trades, Strange Apparitions, the Englehart Rogers stuff. They're discrete stories. There's the Joker Fish story. There's the first appearance of Deadshot in the costume that we recognize him in now. A random Penguin story, the first appearance of the third Clayface, and a Hugo Strange two-parter. But there's some subplots involving Rupert Thorne in the background, but they're discrete stories. And Bruce's romance with Silver St. Cloud, because, Bruce Wayne and his innumerable girlfriends.
Oh, I mean, like when we started talking about our book, that was actually one of the things from the very beginning we talked about wanting to do, was like each issue have its own standalone story, by virtue of, we love that, and also by virtue of the structure of Kickstarter, to where people aren't felt like it's a to be continued for months in between issues. It is I got a complete story, even though each story one leads to the next. But that's kind of our goal with our book, is like each issue is 32 pages long and tells a complete adventure story, like a good D&D one-shot session, and then they all kind of string together over time.
Well, that's it. Let's jump into that then, because you are both here to talk about She Comes with Magic, which is your adult fantasy comic currently on Kickstarter. Matt, talk dirty to me.
Maeve is a wizard with a most unusual way of channeling magic. As a survivor of Siphon's massacre of the preeminent school for arcane arts, Maeve is driven by a burning need for justice and a desire to see hope restored. She finds hope in the form of an oracle in an unexpected place, a brothel. The oracle's message to Maeve changes everything. Thrust into the position of prophesied savior, She begins her quest to save the world. In a twist of fate, Maeve's unique way of channeling magic might just give her the edge she needs to best the starving king. But first, she'll have to channel a lot of magic.
I wrote that and I got chills.
A little peek behind the curtain. I tried multiple different voices for that. Like I tried to kind of. I initially thought maybe this deep basso that you could picture Carmina Burana behind it, and then I was like, no, that's giving it a different twist than I want. And then I was thinking this sort of 70s lounge lizard voice, but I thought no, that's a little belittling of the actual. So I was like, I'll just go with a straight read on it, and I think it worked.
It worked out great. No, I really liked it. No notes.
Well, now I have to ask Matt, because I don't think I've ever actually asked you this question. So every interview we have Matt do a dramatic reading of whatever the solicit blurb is for the book we're going to be talking about. Do you actually rehearse that stuff beforehand, or how often do you do that?
Not often. I read it, and if I'm going to be doing a bit, I'll rehearse that once or twice. But if I'm just going to be doing a mostly straight reading, I just run with it. But if you know the ones I'm talking about, the ones when I'm doing like a voice, those I'll rehearse once or twice. The same with the synopses on Bat Chat. If I'm going to be doing something wacky like the 40s announcer voice for Bombshells, that I try a couple of times first. But if I'm just doing a reading, only so much time in the day.
That is true. Well, as of recording, well before recording, actually, you're already over goal. So congratulations on that. Where are you at in terms of like stretch goals, or kind of what's next as the campaign rolls on?
Yeah. So we were super lucky. We were able to hit our funding goal in under 24 hours. So right now it's just a push to continue to see what we can do. We just posted official stretch goal stuff today, though we had sent an update to backers last week. And I think our first stretch goal, our goal was 10,000. Our first stretch goal is 15, and we're over 14 right now. So the first stretch goal, we have an amazing artist out of New Zealand who do these adorable cartoony renditions of Maeve, who's our main character, and Vaz, who is an owl parrot sidekick. Did 2 stickers of those that we're going to print and give to every backer who backed at the physical level. And then every 5,000 and every 100, 200 backers or so, we've got different levels. And a lot of our stretch goals, we wanted to focus on kind of continuing to invest back into the series. So there's a stretch goal we have where we give a raise to our colorist, who's Gibran Ferdian, who's done an incredible job. There are, guarantee of issue 2 happening. And basically, like a lot of people running Kickstarters, our goal is to fund the production of the book, not necessarily to pay us as creators. So the more we fund over our goal, the more we can invest back into getting the next issue done quicker and the following issue after that. And our plan is to run the series for quite a long time. So any amount that goes over our goals just goes back into getting those together faster and the next Kickstarter out sooner.
And the book itself is already pretty far along, correct? In terms of production?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is written, it is penciled and inked and lettered, and Gibran has colored about 7 or 8 pages, and then the cover. Pages, so that was one email I need to shoot off today. Since we're doing so well, I'm gonna ask him to just jump in and start coloring the rest of the book. So hopefully it'll all be done relatively close to wrapping time, and then we can get it off to the printer ASAP.
That's great. So what's the origin of this project? How far back does this go for you two?
You want me to take that one?
Go for it. You start.
We've written and kind of developed a lot of ideas together, and pitched a lot of stuff, and some just we're kind of always sitting on like 5 or 6 ideas that we're just kind of throwing around and trying to get made. And we had talked at one point like, it's you have this like rise in romanticy, in like erotic literature and stuff like that. It felt strange that I hadn't seen that very much in like the comic space outside of Kickstarter. Like, really like, independent and big publishers are just sort of not touching it. And we had talked about that, but in the end we're like, we had another idea we were going to kickstart, and that maybe didn't seem quite right. And then I'm at work at my day job, and I get a text from Phillip that's like, okay, what about a wizard who channels magic when she comes? And that was sort of just the impetus of like, I'm sorry, I think I misquoted you. I think you said a wizard who's something magic. I should just pull up the text message. But yeah, and I think from there, the whole idea grew around it. We'd already kind of been wanting to think about something we wanted to put to Kickstarter, but like kind of our current pitch we were working on just wasn't a good fit. And that just felt like the right story to tell for that audience, and to try to get them on board with it as well.
Yeah, and I think we were really excited by the idea. It was just one of those, we laughed really hard with every idea we came up with, and by the end of the first day, we had the arc of the series figured out and most of the outline of issue 1 put together. And then it was just like riffing, just coming up, what could we do to kind of like shock and surprise ourselves with the next idea and the next plot. And as we pitched the idea around to friends and we sent them early pages and things like that, the response we got was so positive. We felt like, all right, we're not the only ones who feel like could be really, really fun. So it just kind of spiraled from there. And I was on a break in between. I just wrapped up a run on Astonishing X-Men Infinity, and it was before I started drawing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So I had a couple months, as the way, freelance in comics sometimes works out. And it was during that time we developed it. So I spent a couple months drawing it before I jumped into Power Rangers. And then I went back to X-Men, whatever the current X-Men Infinity line that Orlando's writing. I did a couple issues with him. Sorry, Steve. I've like done so many like Infinity X-Men books. I loot the titles and get jumbled in my head after a while.
How did you two first connect or meet?
So I primarily was a journalist for most of my career, and I worked for a TV news station for a while, and I would go out and produce segments around, stuff going on in the community. So Free Comic Book Day came up. I was the resident nerd in the station. So I got sent out. How much do I tell of this story? So I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So we're doing a Not Safe for Work book. People can just expect it. So one of my coworkers happened to already know Phillip, and was like, oh, Phillip wrote this essentially a virgin's guide to dick for a friend who was getting married and had never, there's a lot of Mormons here, so a lot of people get married having never had sex before, and that was your choice. So Phillip had published this really cute little book that was just like a how-to if you've never touched a penis before, and she showed it to me, and I was like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. I can't wait to meet this person who's going to be at this Free Comic Book Day event that I'm going to go cover. So I get there. I do all my interviews. I'm very professional, as well as professional as somebody with teal hair could be, because I think that's what color. Maybe I had purple hair. Could be interviewed. I think Doug Wagner was there and a few other comic creators. And at the end, I go back, I file my segment, and then I come back because, Free Comic Book Day is still going. I got to get my books. And, I think the store we were at, Black Cat, always has half off trades or something going on, right? So I have, pile of trades in my hand and, getting, comic books signed by all the people who were there. And I lean into Phillip as he's signing the book. And I was like, by the way, I've seen your penis book. And I think we were just meant to be friends after that.
Pretty much.
But we didn't really start hanging out until we started playing D&D together, 3 years later or so, something like that. Yeah. So that's how we met initially. Free Comic Book Day.
Meet cute doesn't always apply. It applies here.
Yeah, it was a long and funny winding road. We played D&D together for a while. We worked on a couple different story stuff. Over this time, we were just friends for years and years and years until we found ourselves in a position where that became more than friends. So, yeah. And then we've worked on stuff ever since.
Yeah, I think we actually worked on stuff before we became more than friends.
Yeah,
yeah.
We
did. You helped me write my very first comic short, or I wrote it, you drew it, and so that was the first thing I guess we ever collaborated on comics wise.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to She Comes with Magic, how did it feel starting a comic by blowing up Hogwarts?
Oh, is that what I did? I mean, you know what? Now that you say it, yeah, I might have some unresolved issues there. Because I was a big nerd, big fantasy kid, and it's really disappointing as a member of the queer community to kind of see like where the creator, who shall not be named, of that Harry Potter series has kind of decided to put her money and her time. And so I guess in the moment I was not thinking about that, but we needed a traumatic event, and I guess that's what came out.
I mean, I think not at 100%, but it wasn't. It was on my mind to a degree, and we had to like figure out like, all right, this is a magical school. What does that mean? Because there's going to be a lot more that we reveal in future issues about what that is. And initially, I was thinking, oh, it's kind of like a Hogwarts thing, and Christie was like, no, this is like a college, like a university. These are not like.
I didn't want it to be about children. Yeah. I'm like, this is an adult book. I don't want there to be like a school full of kids in it.
But it's not, it's not entirely coincidental that we're kind of trying to knock down certain tropes and rebuild them in different ways.
Yeah, I think that is probably a big driver, is sort of like, what is the sort of expected fantasy thing, and how can we play with that? How can we undermine it? How can we subvert it? How can we, even if we like it, use it, and then maybe it, sets up something later that for a nice twist. So I think those tropes and those things that people find familiar in fantasy are always something that's fun to play with, for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of stuff in the book that comes from a kind of a reading and an examination of what is popular in these types of genres. What do we really like? What do we think doesn't quite work? Like there was a handful of romantasy stuff that we read, both for research and just kind of, because it was a broad cultural thing, where we were like, man, for like a smutty fantasy book, there's like no sex in this book. Or you'd read ones where like there's a lot of sex, but there's like no plot, nothing happens in this book. And that was kind of a conversation we had for a long time, even coming before this. Is there a way to balance both character and plot and sex and integrate them in a way that they all work with each other, where one doesn't feel like a distraction, where it's like, oh, we'll just loosely tie some plot to string sex scenes together, or we've got a plot going on, but we're going to cut away to someone having sex because, I don't know, we throw that in there. We wanted it to all feel very holistic in the way that it worked together. And that was kind of one of the challenges we started out with this series was, is there a way for us to do that? And I think we worked really hard at it. And so far, the feedback we've gotten from people is that it balances really nicely. And so we will see how everyone else feels when they read it.
There was a bit of controversy not long ago about Kickstarter changing their policy for not safe for work content.
Yes.
Did that affect your planning? Were you considering another platform, or just sort of sitting back and waiting for them to do exactly what they did, which was backtrack?
I think my hope initially was it would be similar to the OnlyFans situation from a year or two ago, maybe even longer at this point, where essentially they were like, no, we didn't want this platform to be for what everyone uses this platform for. And I was hoping that, and eventually it rolled back because money is more important than, I guess, I don't know, pearl clutching. But we didn't know. Yeah, we had a lot of conversations about, is this how we continue to move forward? I think, and I'll let you jump in, but I think for me, the thing I was most worried about was I didn't want to represent the book as something that it wasn't. I didn't want to pretend it wasn't as dirty as it is. I didn't want people to be surprised, right? If they backed the book and got it, like, oh, there's like explicit sex in here, like, and I felt that, rules as they were, that's what I was really worried about, is if we were going to kickstart this book and we were going to try to follow the rules, we wouldn't be able to actually tell people what the book was.
Yeah, it was a stressful week. We were well into, the book had already been written and drawn at that point. We were working with colorists and designers. Tim Daniel did our incredible logo. So we were doing all of this stuff. I was already talking to Kickstarter. We had the pre-launch page and the main page halfway built. And then I got a text from someone I knew at Kickstarter being like, oh, hey, I'm going to send you the guidelines we just released today. And it was just kind of like, okay, can this be done? I looked at, I think it's Dues, which is Zoop's adult platform that they were building in response, which I think has a lot of potential. And I'm curious to see where Jordan and his crew take that. I was just like, I don't know with where we are coming into this, if that is going to lend us to success. So yeah, it was a little bit of like, is there a way to navigate this that meets the guidelines, but also is very clear disclosure so that there's informed consent with people who buy the book. And thankfully, yeah, there was just the resolution after a week or so with a lot of discussion, a lot of pushback feels more negative than it probably was. There was a lot of like open communication, a lot of creators, a lot of fans submitted information, emails and ticket requests to Kickstarter, letting them know how important this was. And I know on the Kickstarter side, they worked really, really hard and fought really hard to kind of restore the guidelines were and talk to payment processors and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that was a stressful week. It was like, I'm 6 months into this project and it's a big thing when you work on something and you have a lot of hopes for it. And to be like, I don't know if we'll be able to release this or what do we do with it was a little disconcerting, but thankfully things resolved. And even in bringing the book to Kickstarter, we were having kind of reviews, their team looking at the content ahead of time and what we were posting and just to make sure we were still not going to get in any I'm going to say trouble. It's not really trouble, but get flagged by Stripe, which is the main issue. So, there were one or two little tweaks we did, but we felt we were able to clearly communicate like, this is what this book is. We don't want you to be surprised by what it is, but still be able to kind of follow the current guidelines. So it was a relief, but I think everyone on Kickstarter, I've talked to a lot of people, are still figuring out how best to navigate that. And fingers crossed it continues to go well because they can pull the plug at any point.
It doesn't keep us up at night at all.
No, not at all. I'm not stressed at all. Don't worry. I'm not going to be half gray by the time this book is out.
How is working with each other different from working with other collaborators, given your relationship?
I mean, I think they're on a like logistical side, which is probably the least sexy way to answer this question. Like it is just like, it's, because we both have lots of work like your normal 9 to 5 hours is not 9 to 5 is not like a great time for us to like also like hop on a Zoom and like have a discussion about the book. So I mean, there is something that's really nice that's like we have such open communication that like those discussions about story and characters and plot and even like the business side of it can happen at any time, essentially. Like, when we're both together, there's that openness and there's not, I don't know, should we be better about like setting like, we're not talking about work right now boundaries, but
maybe at some point, I don't know.
I think we both like making stories so much that those conversations are fun to have.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of similar sensibilities and some really great opposite approaches that balance stuff out. But, years before we were together and just as we were friends talking about all sorts of random stuff, we kept coming across so much of the same media and same stories and same comics that we loved. And then we could do the thing of like, oh, you loved this. Have you read this? And kind of pass things back and forth. I think one of the first times we were like, okay, I see that person is I was wearing my Kitty Pryde shirt. I think I was wearing a Kitty Pryde t-shirt and we got to talking about how much we loved Kitty Pryde. And especially at the time, kind of our love of her arc in Astonishing X-Men. And I think that was one of the first like, oh, okay, like we see a lot of things in a similar way.
I think the way that began, you might have been also wearing your Kitty Pryde t-shirt, which I don't think I realized, but we were, I think, like setting up for D&D or something, and we were talking comics, and one of the guys in our D&D group was like, oh, well, do you have a favorite X-Men? And I was like, when I want people to think I'm cool, I say Storm, but the truth is Kitty Pryde. And that's when you were like, stood up and showed me your shirt.
Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of sensibilities and, we've described kind of our creative process. We work out a lot of things and volley things around just kind of idea after idea after idea. And hopefully one of us is writing them down. And then
sometimes if it's me, I immediately lose where it is written down. Sorry.
And then when it comes time to like, all right, let's start to structure and form this, because of kind of the way I approach a lot of stuff, I will usually bang out an outline first or a first draft of a script. I can sit down and put together like a really chunky, clunky building block structure pretty fast. I describe it as like I hit things with a hammer and you come in with a chisel afterwards. Because then once we have the blocky form, I can pass it off to Christie and they'll sit down and really begin to interrogate the logic and the world and the characters. And is it consistent with what we said? Is it saying what we want to say? Is it contradicting itself? Does it have the subtlety and layers and nuance that we've talked about in our notes and our discussions, and we kind of begin to form it and shape it into something a lot more interesting and unique instead of kind of just the generic building blocks I use. And then, pass it back to me and I'll do another pass on refinement now that I'm seeing like, oh, okay, now I see what it's becoming and where we really want to sharpen and punch it up. And then we just kind of bounce that back and forth until our script is together. And then even as I'm drawing it, I'm showing you everything along the way to make sure the way we're visually approaching the book kind of is consistent with what we want to say. There were things in the first issue where I was like, I've got this idea and this tangent thing. And you were like, like half of that works, half of that doesn't work. Let's kind of clean it up. Yeah, no, I think it works out for the better. I think we have a really kind of generally a really great way that things kind of naturally just kind of escalate with each other on a creative side of things.
When you're writing a book like this, do the sex puns just flow like water to the point where like there's places where you have to kind of make yourself dial it back, but you're like, oh my God, I've got like a really good one to be perfect here, but Maeve's supposed to be sad about someone dying or something like that.
I think the best one we have so far I think that one was yours. Was it the Seed Reader? Was that one? Yeah. Like, that one still tickles me so much. It was sort of the type of magic user that we gave to our Oracle character Ryle, and he presents very druid-like for D&D people, and the idea of a seed reader, you might think, oh, he probably takes like a bunch of like sunflower seeds and casts them on the ground and reads them. No, it's not that kind of seed. Not at all. But yeah, and I don't know. I both hated it and loved it, and we pretty much had to use it at that point. But I think you probably come up with more of like the sex puns than I do, surprisingly, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, in conversation as we talk about stuff, anytime we throw something out, one of us will jot it down of like, we have to find a place to use this. And if it fits when what we're doing at the moment, great. If not, it's waiting for the appropriate time to use it. Because, just the material we've talked about and created alone. The other day we were hanging out at the pool and we just got talking after work, and it was like, oh, we've now plotted out the next like 12 issues without even trying to. It just kind of came together with all the things we've been talking about. So, we have to kind of parse it out in the appropriate spot. I don't think we've ever like had to kill a darling because it doesn't quite fit. It's more like, we'll save that for another time. There's always going to be...
I'm killing darlings all the time.
Like good puns. Puns.
Yeah,
I'll save a good pun because we will find a place
true.
to use it.
There's a bank.
When it came to character design and the selection of fantasy species, how did all that come about? Was it, you just sort of broke down character and then it was like, okay, Philip, you're drawing this. What kind of thing do you think this individual should be? Or was there more of a back and forth? Mostly I ask because I think Vaz the Birdman in a bow tie might be the sensational character find of 2026, and him being a Birdman in a bow tie just makes it all the better.
Okay, I'll come back to Vaz in a second. But I think, as far as like broader character and stuff like that, I think, some of our conversations sort of, revolve around this idea of like, and at least in my head, maybe I never had these conversations out loud, where essentially like, I kind of wish more fantasy worlds were like as diverse as they are when I'm like playing a D&D game with like friends, right? Where sometimes, everybody's like a wacky race, sometimes you just end up with a party full of like humans and elves and that kind of sucks, but like, whatever. But like, in a world where like literally sky's the limit. Why are we like limiting ourselves to like, you know, just some hobbits, some elves, some dwarves, and call it good? When, you know, we can really throw the kitchen sink at it, body wise, race wise, species wise. Like, you know, this is our world and we want to populate it with like very interesting looking people and characters. So I think that was sort of like something we wanted to do, was like a very diverse representation. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that before I just like talk about Voz.
No, yeah. Before you talk about the world's most perfect boy, I think with Maeve especially, like obviously, you know, she's not a tiefling. That is a trademarked race.
Is it trademarked?
I'd have to double check on that. I think we've been careful just in case.
Yeah.
But you know, she's a pink horned individuul with a tail and everything like that. And we're like, well, tieflings are the horniest race, so I think
the visual puns right there.
Yeah. And I think you were like, and she's pink, and I was like, perfect. She will visually stand out.
Gently inspired by that Janelle Monáe song. So.
Oh, okay. And I think, you know, in comics, I've become a devotee, and I've talked to other creators about this. Like, if in comics your characters need to be so visually distinct and so visually strong that the second people see them, they want the toy, they want to build the cosplay, they want to draw their own fan art. Like, I realize not every single comic fits in that category, but generally it's a visual medium. So what are you doing to capitalize on the visual aspect of the medium? You look at some of, like, you know, some of the most famous newer characters or newer designs, let's just say 10 years ago, because those are the ones that come to mind. Like, you know, Babs Tarr's Batgirl of Burnside, or Robbie Rodriguez and Rico Renzi's Spider-Gwen, or things like that, where the second those designs hit the internet, by the end of the day, I was seeing cosplayers being like, I'm working on my cosplay for this costume and the toys.
I've already got a bikini version.
Yeah. And like, I was like, I'm
a cosplayer, I can say that.
It was a light bulb moment for me to be like, oh, this is a successful character design in comics. Like, I want to make sure when I get the chance to design characters, I'm doing my darndest, whether I'm successful or not, to be like, this is the design that someone wants the action figure of. Like when I was doing, you know, the designs of the new costumes for Astonishing X-Men with Banshee and Skin and Husk, I was just constantly going back, like, does this, you know, capture the, you know, the essence of the character, but is it going to look like a cool Marvel Legends figure? And as I sent it to people, they were like, I bet there was someone building custom Marvel Legends figures of those characters, like the second the designs were released. And I was like, that means the world to me. It means that hopefully for some people I did that right. And that's kind of how we approached our characters in this one, is like, how do we capture the essence? How is it streamlined enough that you could animate this, or you could do a cosplay, or you could, this doesn't have unnecessary design elements? And what is the strongest look that looks like a dope action figure? Now, Voz, talk about Voz.
Yeah, Voz came along a little later in the process. Like, it was not really in the original outline or even the original like first few drafts of the first issue script. I think I was like, I don't know. We had these like two really sexy, horny leads, you know, Ryle and Maeve, you know, kind of running for their lives, fighting and then running for their lives. And it just sort of, I don't know, I felt like we needed a balance to them. And I just love a weird little guy. And we were a fantasy book without a weird little guy. I also love birds, and I love Kakapo, and I love D&D, and in D&D there's something called an owlbear, which is like a wizard's idea of a joke where they're like, I'm going to take an owl and I'm going to take a bear and I'm going to moosh them together, and I made a horrifying new race and of, you know, creature. And Kakapo are also colloquially known as owl parrots. And I love a Kakapo, and there's a really famous, I think I was like, well, what's a really horny bird? And there's a really famous viral video of, oh, help me, Stephen Fry, when he was doing this like nature documentary with his friend, where a Kakapo is actively trying to like mate with his friend's head. So look it up if you haven't seen it. It's hilarious. It's a few years old, but you know, it's great. It's still hilarious. And I was like, well, let's kind of flip that on its head. So he's this like, you know, little horny bird race inspired, but I really wanted him to be like kind of proper and discreet, in contrast to our horny, sexy other leads, but, kind of. So, if you want a discreet, distinguished little gentleman, he needs a little waistcoat and he needs spectacles and judgy eyes. And Philip brought that to life really well.
And I gave him a bow tie.
And a bow tie.
He needed a bow tie. And he's quickly become ours and everyone's favorite character. And we need this book to be successful enough so we can make Voss plushies.
And also like a Voss spinoff at some point.
And we've talked about a Voss one-shotter miniseries already.
You need to track down Fiona Staples and Brian Vaughan, and there needs to be Goose from Saga meets Voss. Like the two of them just having like a day of tea and hanging out on Goose's farm.
Goose at some point did come up in the discussion as I was like trying to make this make sense to you. It was like Goose became like sort of like, oh yes, okay, now I see kind of where you're at with why you want this thing.
Yeah, I literally reached around to grab my Goose plushie, but I realized he's in the other room in another bookcase full of comics. But yes, I was like 100%. You need another. Again, it goes back to visual storytelling. Like you need those identifiable characters. Fiona Staples is the best at this. Like every single
you could just
character.
say Fiona Staples is the best.
The best, period. Yeah, like I have, when McFarlane for a while was releasing those Saga action figures, every time they were out, I was just like in line at Comic-Con buying 2 of them. And just have a wall stacked full of them, and I need new lines, new waves of them because they're just such incredible character designs.
So, what are some of your respective fantasy touchstones? You mentioned playing D&D, but in terms of like books, movies, video games, whatever, you have faves there.
Oh boy, how long you got? High level. I mean, obviously D&D I've been playing for over almost 15 years now, something like that. But I read Harry Potter as a kid. I read Lord of the Rings, and I think more so as I've gotten older, I've read Brandon Sanderson, and I love a lot of fantasy. I read a lot of fantasy literature, and honestly, I think video game wise, one of my kind of favorite like fantasy RPGs is actually like the Dragon Age series, which I think gets like, it's not as popular as some others, but like, it shows up from time to time. But I really love that series. It's probably one of the few game series I've like probably 100% almost every one. So that's something that I did with my time. But yeah, no, and I think I don't know how much like that world necessarily translates into and inspires me, but I love something that allows for character choice and for those choices to impact the ending. And I think when I'm looking for a fantasy game, that's something I'm looking for. And plus, like, once again, like I can make a character as like ugly and as beautiful I want. The character builder on that is like so in depth, especially like the most recent ones. So those are some of the things that I don't know. I'm sure you can think of more that I've read that you're like, what about this thing? What about this thing?
I mean, you're a huge Dragon Riders of Pern kid,
oh God.
So.
Okay, technically, that is science fiction. It is not fantasy. She consulted many geneticists to figure out how one would genetically engineer dragons. So therefore, not fantasy. It is basically a fantasy book. That was probably my favorite book series as a kid. I love dragons. I've already talked to Philip about how are we getting dragons into this story. Yeah, dragons. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of horror growing up. Like I was the 11-year-old kid reading Stephen King because my parents didn't know what they were getting me. And good for me because I read so much and, read tons of Star Wars growing up. So I didn't read a lot of fantasy. But like, as into my adulthood.
Star Wars is fantasy.
Star Wars is fantasy. It is space fantasy. And I love space fantasy so much.
It depends on the project. I was just having a very in-depth conversation on the CXF Slack about this. The Jedi, the Skywalker stuff, yes. But Andor, Rogue One, those are science fiction. A lot of Timothy Zahn's novels, not the Thrawn trilogy, but the original Thrawn trilogy, but his later Thrawn stuff, is absolutely military science
Fair,
fiction.
yeah. No,
Yeah, that's fair.
100% fair.
Star Wars has become sort of a genre into itself with subgenres.
What genre is your book? It's Star Wars. It's not a Star Wars TM. It's just,
It's one of the many
Star Wars genre.
So yeah, but like as an adult going into fantasy, like Skyrim is probably like my favorite video game of all time.
Yeah.
Like when I die, bury Skyrim in, or put Skyrim in the urn with me.
Talk about a game where you can make an ugly character.
Yeah, you can't make a pretty character. It's only ugly characters. Absolutely love Skyrim. And there, back, reading comics in the late 90s, I was a big Battle Chasers fan. Like, even though that book never ended or never finished, and I don't know if I went back today and read it, if it would be any quality, but it was just, gorgeous, vast, colorful worlds that you could create. I loved Rick Remender and Jerome Opeña's A Seven to Eternity a handful of years ago. And then I've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson over the last handful of years too, and really love kind of the Mistborn stuff. So I don't think my fantasy well is as deep as yours, but I have now got close to 400 hours logged in Baldur's Gate 3, so I guess that's not for nothing. And I've been running Dungeons and Dragons games for 6 or 7 years now at least. So yeah, that's kind of some of the touchstone and influences, I think, where I come from.
Great, that's great. I've always been a big Final Fantasy guy in terms of video games, and I think them only releasing those games through the PlayStation after like 13 or whatever it was probably has, saved me from falling down a few rabbit holes. Although I still go back to like 4, 6, and 7 every, at least once a year.
They've been remastering those games so regularly too. It's like a whole new lease on life. So
exactly. Conversely, are there other erotic or overtly sexual comics in the vein of She Comes with Magic that you'd recommend or hold up as examples of, this is not similar to what we're trying to do, but spiritually?
Yeah. It's one of those your retailer could recommend you, if you like this, you'll like this type things.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, one of the first comics that I read that felt like truly adult in a lot of ways was Saga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe Sex Criminals.
Sex Criminals is a good one. Any of Stepan Shayich's books like Sunstone or Fine Print or even stuff kind of in that vein, I think very much it kind of fits alongside. And we were so lucky and so incredibly blessed to have him do a cover for the book. He did our B cover, and that was just absolutely incredible. And then, like White Trees, like Chip Zdarsky and Chris Anka's series would probably be a good comp for that as well. I can't say any of those books were like inspirations in us building it, but I felt like, oh, these are books like that we could shelve right alongside, and I think would work really well in books that were both story and genre focused, but also were much more adult and mature in the way they approached sex, both conceptually, narratively, and then also visually on the page. They weren't afraid to show what needs to be shown when you're talking about it. They didn't skirt around the issue.
Like, it's a bit of a deep cut, and I always hesitate bringing up because there is so much like drama and like some possibly problematic stuff around it back in the day. So there's like my caveat warning, but I really did enjoy Image's Shadowline had Curtis Weeby's Rat Queens on it, and that kind of, I feel like, could also go next to ours if you can get around. There's just so much behind the scenes on those books. You can Google it and learn all about it. And it's really disheartening because it was such a fun fantasy, very raucous, irreverent kind of adventure book. So
given you both play as much D&D as you do, how does the art of DMing help you when it comes to crafting a comic like this?
Oh my God. DMing has taught me so much about writing comics. I was actually talking to Jackson Lansing about this when we were all hanging out in a bar in Seattle a couple of years ago. But prior to DMing a lot, like when I would write a story, so like Triage is a creator-owned miniseries that I wrote and drew for Dark Horse a couple of years ago. That was prior to DMing. So I was so used to approaching things almost like a screenplay, where like I had to know the end from the beginning. I had to have all of the beats worked out. Everything had to be outlined. so that I felt like my mini series was incredibly tight. And I'm proud of the work I did in that space. But I was always like, man, I don't know how you write an ongoing series, because there's no way to be able to tightly plan out arcs and twists and turns and reveals and this, that, and the other thing. And then as I started DMing games, like, you're playing an ongoing game, and basically just to keep myself and my players interested, I would throw out stuff constantly. Every time I had an idea of like, that's really cool, like a really weird twist on something. And I would never have any idea how that worked or how it tied into the larger story, but it would just be like a dangling plot thread that threw things off. And then I would start to get to the point where I was like, oh, I got to start wrapping all these plot threads together. So I would just like map out all the loose things and figure out how do they tie into the characters and how do they tie into a complete story. And I felt like I had pretty decent success all around. Like my players remembered the things that were cool and forgot the things that weren't important. So I didn't have to worry about those things as much. And then just like the puzzle of bringing it all together is my absolute favorite thing. I would just like wander my neighborhood muttering to myself like someone who needed some help, just figuring out like, I got this and I've got this and what in the world, and finding the way they work together. So that is now how I approach writing comics. And I think especially for this book is, each issue, like we had mentioned earlier, is going to be like a self-contained story that leads into a further thing. But the goal of the book is to kind of just surprise and entertain ourselves with each issue. And yes, we will find a way to make everything work, but it doesn't have to be so tight and so structured that it feels like there's no room for surprise, even for us as the authors. And that's what I've learned a lot. And I think when I was talking to Jackson, I was like, writing comics is like DMing. He's like, yeah, it's just like DMing, except you get to control what your characters, like what they do. And I think at the time he and Colin were writing Captain America, and we talked a little bit about kind of that process of just surprising yourself and setting up cool situations, and then allowing those characters to make the choices that then dictate how the story spins, and still having some reins on it. But yeah, I think it is changed how I write for the better, and makes it even more exciting to just, throw things out that we know are going to pay off, but I don't have to figure it out at the moment, because there could be things that the audience latches onto. Like even in showing this first issue, we've shown it to hundreds of people at this point who work in comics, and the feedback and responses we've got from people has been really good, and also sometimes really surprising of what they like loved about this, or which characters they latch. Like everyone latching on to Vaz. We're like, we got to make Vaz more important in issue 2 than we had planned. Like it was like,
oh, you had planned. I was always going to put him in there.
I was like, he'll come back like a couple issues down the road or
whatever.
No,
I was going to find a way.
Now it's like he's got to be back at issue 2 and be there the whole time, because everyone loves Vaz. Like I love the flexibility that approaching something and allowing yourself to be surprised and being confident in your skills to be able to pull it together in a satisfying way. Because there's nothing more I hate than like an unsatisfying ending. But I'm like, oh, we can figure it out. Like we've got the skills and the love for this, that we can throw stuff out, craziest stuff in the world, and find a way to make it a resonant, because like it's important to us.
Yeah, I think the thing, because I haven't DM'd as much as you, and it's been a while, basically since Phillip and I have been playing together. You love DMing, and I used to DM a lot prior to us being together, but I love building characters so much that I'm perfectly happy to be like, you DM. But I think for me, the thing that I took the most from it was, I played a lot of games, especially where somebody would have it in their head, the DM would have it in their head, how this is going to go. This is my world. I'm in control. Doesn't really matter what you guys do. It's all going to go, pretty railroady. It's all going to go one way. And I think when I started DMing, for me, it was very much like, I want, like, they don't have to be immediate. Sometimes they will be, but I want, the choices that the people at my table make to have meaningful consequences in this world. And I feel the same way when I play video games, right? Like I want the narrative decisions that I make to have consequences, to change outcomes. So whenever I have characters in a story that we're writing that are making choices, whether they're immediate or whether, it's something down the line, I want those choices to have identifiable consequences. So it feels like they are acting on the world, and the world isn't just acting on them.
Yeah, and that was kind of a trope that we saw in a lot of books as we were reading. Not all of them, obviously, but there were some where it was like, oh, the main character is just sits there and everyone does everything for her.
Or just stuff happens around
Or stuff
them.
happens around them. Like they don't take active choices. Or when they do make an active choice, you know, a side character steps in and says, step aside, little person, I will take over. And I'm like, oh no, like I love an active protagonist who changes the world and leads their own story no matter who they are. I don't want a passive person where the world changes around them and they have to react to it. I want the world to react to their choices.
Yeah, and I think that was also my hesitance to like have a protagonist that was also like kind of the reluctant hero type, like somebody who you were going to narratively have to find a reason to force them to take an active role in their own story. And like I think that can work, and I think people have done interesting kind of cynical anti-hero types that, you know, begrudgingly, you know, participate in you know, and you know, begin their hero's journey or whatever the case may be. But I think I really wanted somebody who was ready to forge ahead, and maybe I was a little weary of jaded, cynical, reluctant characters.
So, Christie, as somebody with a journalism background, I've also been a newspaper editor for like 20 years. I'm curious, have you had
My
the experience?
condolences.
Thank you. Have you had the experience in your office, newsroom, whatever, when a comic convention comes to town where you have to sort of translate geek for everyone else? Like they're looking at the cosplay gallery from day one of, you know, Fan Expo Salt Lake or whatever, and they're like, who's that supposed to be? And you're the one who jumps in and says, you know, oh, that's Sailor Neptune. Here's her whole deal.
I actually cosplayed Sailor Neptune, a punk rock version, at FanX in Salt Lake. So that's crazy that you knew that. No, yes. Yeah. The answer to your question is yes. Like, so I started in TV news in 2013, and I think that was also the first year of FanX. So I field produced almost every live segment that because we were the media sponsor, so I field produced every live segment and most of the recorded segments that we did from there, because we're the media sponsor. We got to be there, got to be covering it, which was great for me. But I've got all of these anchors and reporters, you know, out there in front of the camera who have no idea who they're talking to. They don't know who this actor is. They don't know who this cosplayer is supposed to be dressed up as. So I'm the person that's like whispering in their ear and handing them questions right before they go live. That's like, oh, hey, this is Brandon Routh. He played Superman. You know what I mean? So like what a weird poll, but like I did do, like I'm explaining like George Takei to my 4 p.m. anchor, like, you know, like, yeah, like absolutely, like anybody in like any geek space would be like, it's George Takei, and I'm like, okay, so he was in Star Trek, and so, and like he also like wrote this like really beautiful graphic novel about his experience as a child in an internment camp. Like that's what he's talking about here. Like here are some questions, you know. And by the end of it, you know, I always get a reporter that, you know, thinks like, oh, well, I did that. Like producers are the most invisible job as far as TV news goes. So it does, you do all the work and get absolutely none of the credit because you're never on camera. But yes, that was me. I was, and when I had to work, so like days I wasn't working, I would cosplay. But if I was working, I was also cosplaying, just very sneakily. So I would always dress up as like comic book journalists. So I was like Lois Lane, I was April O'Neil, and stuff like that while I was covering comic conventions.
When you came in with the little mustache as Jonah, it was a thing.
You know, that one didn't go over as well. I was just screaming at every person, get me pictures of Spider-Man.
Oh, God. This person with a square mustache keeps yelling at me.
Yeah.
That would be like the ultimate scavenger hunt thing at a con, though. Is like you've got a bunch of prizes on you as J. Jonah Jameson, and you're always yelling for people to, and if they bring you back pictures of Spider-Man, you give them cool shit.
I love that idea. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that at FanX this year. Okay.
Gave me something called a no prize. It's an empty envelope. What is this?
You get nothing in like it. You don't get bonus points for doing your job, Parker.
Go see Miss Brandt. She'll give you your voucher. Crash the train. No. So, this first campaign, you're already overfunding, you're into stretch goals. Theoretically, you want to keep this train moving. Have you figured out kind of what the plan is for She Comes with Magic going forward?
Yeah, our hope is, and our plan is to run a new campaign for the subsequent issue every 3 months. So we're hoping we're able to put out 4 issues a year. Each issue will be 32 pages. They're going to be oversized like the first issue. So, Kickstarter, the price points are higher because you are like buying directly from individual small press creators. So with that, I wanted to make sure that the issues are larger. Like it's 1.5 times the size of a DC or Marvel issue. So yeah, it's going to be more expensive, but you're also getting way more content than you would buying something from your LCS. So yeah, hopefully 4 issues a year, and then about every 4 issues, we'll probably have a campaign to collect those issues in a trade, because 4 issues at 32 pages is equal to about 6 issues worth of content. So that's good for like a soft cover trade. And then, hopefully we'll be able to do that for as long as we've got story. This is a really great campaign in that it's giving us a nice place to start from. I'm friends with Charlie Stickney, who does all the White Ash books. Charlie is incredible. I've watched him for years just build an entire publishing empire by single issue Kickstarters. And actually watching him do that was one of the inspirations years ago, where I was like, I wonder if I could find a way to do something similar. But in talking to Charlie, who was incredibly helpful for getting this campaign together, hopped on the phone for hours with me and all sorts of messages just to give us guidance and feedback. And he was like, yeah, this is a place to start by the time you hit your 3rd or 4th issue, and you have people who are like, oh, this is reliably, consistently coming out. I can now hop in with issue 4 and buy issues 3, 2, and 1, either physical copies or a digital catch up. Or he said it's a really good place to kind of begin to build. And the more you do, the larger your audience and kind of the more financially successful you can become. And so we're excited that we're starting here, and it'll give us a good place to jump from. And we've already got a good chunk of issue 2 figured out. I think after San Diego Comic-Con, we decided we're going to sit down and start scripting issue 2, because we've got a lot of it figured out. But yeah, that is the plan, and we're going to do our darndest to kind of continually and consistently do that until it kind of grows to the point where we can focus on it even more full time. I'm still drawing the new Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series at Boom right now, and all sorts of other little things. So it'll be a little bit of a juggling act for a while. But hopefully we can kind of build it to where it's its own little self-sustaining series. And I've been working in comics for 12 plus years at this point, drawn a lot of stuff over the years. And drawing this book was like, this was the most fun I've ever had in comics. And I hope I get to do more of this, because this reminds me, I'm like, oh yeah, this was the stuff that I loved growing up as a kid. Not necessarily this content. I wasn't reading fantasy porn comics as a kid, but just like that free abandoned creativity where you can do anything you want and you can be as wild and as crazy. And now, coming as an adult who's worked in comics for a long time, I've got a little bit more of a skill set to know how to hone and focus and refine that into something that is, hopefully really, really, really good and people really, really enjoy. But it's that fun, reckless abandon that comes with kind of that creativity without boundaries.
You mentioned Power Rangers. I just want to get a little plug, make sure we get a little plug in for that. How did the opportunity to jump on that book with Marguerite come about?
Yeah, the beginning of the year, I just sent out a whole bunch of emails to editors that I know, just being like, hey, my schedule's open. Let me know if you got anything we could work together on. And I sent an email to Andy Schmidt, who's the editor-in-chief at Boom. And I've known Andy for years. We've worked together on a lot of non-comic book stuff. Like I taught with Comics Experience for years, his online comic book teaching program. And I didn't hear back from Andy, but about an hour later, T, who is the editor on Power Rangers, emailed me and they were like, hey, do you want to draw Power Rangers? And they gave me the pitch for the book. They were doing a relaunch, and Marguerite Bennett's writing it, and it'll be taking the 5 original Rangers and jumping them forward. It's 10 years after they've graduated high school, and they've all kind of moved on from being Rangers, but they get called back into active duty. So it's a little bit of how do you balance life as, a post-collegiate career person, and who's ready to return and who's got I've got a life going on. And I love that. I watched the original show way back in the day. So yeah, that's how it came together. And I'm working with artist Andrew Griffith, we're kind of alternating about every 2 issues to kind of keep the book consistently popping. Marguerite is structuring issues to be like one and done or 2-parters, like really quick fun, self-contained stories like the original TV show was. So I come in with issues 3 and 4, and then I'm back with issues 6 and 7. And I'm working on issue 6 right now, and I've got the script for 7, and they're really, really fun stuff. I've got 2 kids that are almost 12 and almost 15, and I was telling them about this issue 6 and 7, just describing to them what happens, and they were both just in hysterics. And neither of them have read Power Rangers, but my daughter, who's almost 12, she was like, I need to see every single page of this book. This is amazing. And so Marguerite's doing a great job, and I'm really excited. Issue 2 comes out, I think, next week, and then issue 3 will be out in August, which is the first one I'm drawing. So it's been a blast and real fun to do.
Now, at the other end, pre She Comes with Magic, you were drawing a lot of the X-Men Infinity comics, as we've talked about. And in doing that, you've got to play with and draw a lot of different mutants. And X-Men is one of those where, everybody's got their fave. And,
Yep.
it's not like Cyclops or Wolverine or Storm. It's Multiple Man or Megan or whatever. So after doing that, are there any characters that are sort of X-Men characters left on your bucket list that you hadn't gotten to draw yet?
That's a good question. I didn't get a chance to draw a lot of Wolverine, a little bit here and there with the way the issues were and kind of what I was drawing. He was always either elsewhere or, whatever the focus was. So that, Wolverine was kind of the character that brought me into X-Men. I think, honestly, my favorite character outside of Kitty Pryde, who I didn't get a chance to draw more than like one panel. So I got to come back and draw Kitty. I'm a big Cable head. If anyone's ever followed me online, I'm endlessly talking about Cable. And I'm the type of weirdo who will cry talking about Cable. That's how much I love Cable. And I thankfully got to draw Cable quite a bit. But there's never enough. And there's never enough guns. There's never enough pouches. There's never enough big dad energy. So I will, that is the one I'm like, I will come back to Cable any and at all times. In fact, when Darren Shan, who was editing the recent X-Men Infinity book, reached out, he was like, hey, do you want to come back for a couple issues? Steve Orlando's writing it, and I'd worked with Steve before on X-Men Unlimited and really liked Steve. And at that point, I was already drawing Power Rangers, and I was drawing another project on the side, and we're prepping She Comes with Magic. And Darren's like, it's 4 issues. It's 90s X-Force and 90s X-Factor. And I think I wrote him back and I was like, God damn it, Darren. I don't have time for this, but you said the magic word, so I'll just not sleep for 3 months. Let's do it. And so I got to come back and draw those 4 issues with classic X-Force and classic 90s X-Factor. And absolutely love it. It was so much fun to draw all the characters I grew up loving, both visually and loving the characters, to draw them in that form. So yeah, I'll come back to do Cable anytime. I will do Kitty Pryde at any time. And then we can get into
Kate or whatever she's going by.
Kate or Kitty. Yeah. I don't know where she's at these days. Post Krakoa, what she's going by. Those are a couple off the top of my head, but I love all the weird 90s X-Men characters, and I love kind of the evolution of where so many of them are to this day. I mean, I got to draw Betsy and Rachel in the wedding special that Teeny wrote.
Drew the heck out of them.
That one was so much fun to be able to do those characters. And I'm like, give me a Mr. Sinister. Can I draw a Sassy Sinister?
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Because I love a Sassy Sinister so much, and I have not drawn Sinister yet. So there we go.
So as we begin the cool down, do you have a local comic shop or a favorite comic shop that you'd like to get a shout out in for?
I think I kind of already not accidentally, but I did talk. The place where Phillip and I met is Black Cat Comics in Salt Lake City. The owner, Greg, good dude, old school metalhead. Like, he makes good Rex. So, check it out.
And I think also in Salt Lake, we've got the Nerd Store. They've got up to now 3 locations across Utah. It's Charles and Roger Prowse, also 2 really good dudes. I met them at Denver Comic-Con years ago, and they just started their store and had hand printed business cards. And, they hosted James Tynan and the Exquisite Corpse Tour just recently. They've really expanded and grown. So those 2 shops kind of cover a lot of, Salt Lake City and Utah area, with really good owners who treat people really well generally and really want comics to thrive and grow and expand. And especially in Salt Lake, where it's a community that, you could say the minoritized groups are very strong, but also need the support they can. And often, those comics are good bastions for queer kids and other people. Comics and X-Men alone bring in people who feel like they don't belong or need a sense of community. And I love that comic book stores often become those places for all sorts of types and groups of people. But those two stores have done a really good job kind of representing that inclusive nature of the community.
Yeah, I mean, just on that note, like, when I was, getting back into comics, like there were still shops that I would occasionally hit up where, I would bring up my, books that I was buying, and whoever was at the counter would like make fun of me or like ask me if they were for my boyfriend. Like, and this was still happening in like 2014. Like at that point, you'd think we would know better. But yeah, I will say like Black Cat Nerd Store, that never happened to me. I never had, a shop owner or a shop clerk ignore me to like look at the dude I was with to be like, what do you need? So, good places, even if, you look like me.
Or ignore the dude to ogle you.
I wish that happened more. Mostly I just like condescended to, which, yeah. It's like, I know more than you.
I was once shopping around for a new comic shop, and I saw the clerk ignore two guys to hit on the one young woman who was in the shop. And then, I don't know if this is better or worse, started ignoring her when I walked up with my, stack of 40 comics. Like, well, at least he has business sense and is a scumbag. That shop has closed since, and I don't feel terrible about that.
Yeah, we've all got stories of those awful comic shops that we went into that, most of them are not around anymore. So yay for good retailers, and let's support the good ones and grow the community.
Hence this question.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is a comic by another creator, and you can't say each other, that you're enjoying right now? Philip, why don't we start with you?
I think, what is it? An easy rec off the top of my head is World Tree by James Tynion and Fernando Blanco. James, and it's funny, like I know James, we got to know each other the last year or two, and it's not like we're best buds, but it's also hard because I'm like, James, you're the best writer in comics. Like, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, but like, it's been this way for years. The Tiny Onion entire like publishing line is incredible. I think World Tree is an incredibly cool book that maybe doesn't get as much love as it should. And I'm sure it sells really well. It's not ignored by any means, but I mean, the talk has been Exquisite Corpses, which is a great book and really successful. But like World Tree,
fun character designs.
Yeah, again, Michael Walsh and James Tynion have a very similar philosophy. That I wouldn't say like they got it from me. I'm like, oh look, they think like I do too. But like that, World Tree is brilliant. Nice House by the Sea and Nice House by the Lake. Those are some of the best comics ever made, and I'm not even being I'm not even speaking in hyperbole. They're incredible. I have so many editions. Like literally right behind me, I've got a Tynion shelf. Oops, I knocked the light over. A Tynion shelf right here. So yeah, those are two off the top of my head that I'm like, oh yeah, like it's fairly an easy pick and an obvious one, but like I think more people could and should buy those books and they would enjoy the hell out of them. They are so good.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I mean, kind of in the same camp. I recently been going back to Department of Truth, which is another Tynion book, and a lot of that is just sort of the state of everything. And I recently discovered within the last couple of years that like my own father is like deeply embedded in a lot of conspiracy stuff, doesn't subscribe to round earth theory. So it's close to home. So that one in particular is one I was recently revisiting, that I absolutely, it's such a beautiful, strange book, and it's lovely. As the Kodansha was re-releasing all of the Sailor Moon in the new collections, I have also been reading those, and that has been fantastic. Oh my gosh, I know there's other stuff. I've been very slowly working my way through Alan Moore's Promethea, which I am really, really enjoying. Let's see, what else have I been really enjoying lately?
Like another plug real quick, just for a book that I'm like, oh, this book should be selling 12 times what it's selling, is The Power Fantasy by Kieran Gillen and Caspar Wingard,
like
so good. Yeah, that book, every single issue, when I finished it, I would throw it on the ground and I would scream "fuck" at the top of my lungs because it was so good and just made me mad. And the thing is, I've handed it to other friends who have like varied tastes. Like I was like,
Mhm.
we don't always like the same thing, but read this book, same reaction. Throw the trade on the ground. I look over it. It was Ryan Cady, who's a writer in comics.
Yeah.
Ryan is a
Sure.
brilliant, incredible human, one of my best friends. And he was over visiting us one time, and I was like, "Read this." He was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, trust me." And he was like, "God damn it, Phil!" And he read.
Quit writing.
Yeah,
now.
he read all 3 trades before I even read volume 3. Like he bought it and read it right there. That was So that's one of those. I'm like, yeah, obviously it's two of the most brilliant creators, but why is that book not selling Absolute Batman numbers? It's not Absolute Batman. It would not sell that many numbers, but it should sell 70,000 copies an issue. It is so good. It is on par. Like, you should buy a copy of Saga and a copy of Power Fantasy every month that they come out. They're both very different stories, but top tier, peak exploration of the comics medium.
Yeah, no, I know Kieran's busy with Diloaded right now, but that last Power Fantasy before the series hiatus was just that was an ending that blew my mind. And Casper just like, I've always loved Casper, but like he's just getting better with every book. Like I thought he'd peaked at Homesick Pilots.
Yeah.
And then this happened.
Yeah. And I know there are a couple issues into the next arc, so I was worried it was like not going to come back, and then turns out, yeah, I'm like, okay, it's going to come back, and I can breathe a sigh of relief, because it is. If it would have ended there, it would have been the most perfect gut punch ending ever. But also, I need to know what happens next. So.
Yeah. Well, listen. Is there anything else that either of you needs to plug, whether it's other work or convention stuff, signings, anything like that?
Yeah, we'll be at San Diego Comic-Con here in a couple weeks. I'm doing like a panel with Power Rangers, a panel on pitching with Tini Howard and Rich Duick. We'll be around. Christie's going to do some cool cosplays.
Find me, take a photo. Maybe I'll have something to hand out. Like, I don't know, like J. Jonah Jameson. No, just kidding. I'm not going to do that.
No prize.
I don't have enough time to put that together.
Yeah, that's kind of like the last con. I mean, I'll be in New York later this fall. I just got accepted, so I'm prepping all that stuff. By then, we should have She Comes with Magic printed. Our goal is to have it done so I can bring copies to New York to sell to people who missed out on the Kickstarter. But yeah, outside of that and Power Rangers, I think that's really all I've got pluggable that I can talk about. Do you got anything?
When does Witching Season come out? Is that out yet?
I know they'll start shipping after San Diego, I think. So,
but we do have a story in Witching Season, another Kickstarter original.
Yeah, that one was really fun. That was a precursor to She Comes with Magic. We did that last year before we started on the book.
Oh, that's right. Oh, it's been so long. I sometimes forget about these extended printing timelines and stuff and where we end up. But yeah, that should be out. We have a story on that I really like. It's a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will be at San Diego. I will be dressed up, maybe as Maeve, so the main character from our book. So come find us. I'll be around. I'll be pink.
That's excellent. Well, Christie, Phillip, this has been a fantastic time. Final question as we release you back into the world. How should people follow you online to keep up with She Comes with Magic and everything else that you have going on?
I am at Porter Geeks Out on most of the socials, but for some reason I really decided to just be Christie Porter on Blue Sky, which is probably the one I check the most. So that's where I'm there.
Yeah, you can. I'm Phillip Sevy on Blue Sky, and then Phillip Sevy Comic Art on Instagram. And then you can go to shecomeswithmagic.com. That'll redirect you to the Kickstarter. But once that Kickstarter is done, that website will continue to be the landing page for the series and for future Kickstarter. So it's just easy enough to bookmark that because it'll always take you back to the book.
Excellent. Well, Phillip, Christie, thank you both for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for taking time
us.
And having us on and chatting.
10 comics. It's great. It's a good time.
That's it for this week's show. As a reminder, you can find the Comics XF interview podcast at Comics XF, along with our sister podcasts, Battle of the Atom and Bat Chat with Matt and Will. You can listen to the Comics XF interview podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Audible, and at comicsxf.com, where new episodes move Tuesday mornings. You can support Comics XF at patreon.com/comicsxf, where a $1 donation gets you a shout out at the end of every episode of the Comics XF interview podcast. A $2 donation gets you early access to this podcast and a shout out at the end of every episode. A $3 donation get you access to our monthly bonus podcast, Our Son Pete, a deep dive into the comic appearances of British mutant super spy Pete Wisdom. A $5 donation gets you access to Our Son Pete and a Pete Wisdom Hawklaw sticker designed by Kevin Newburn, or an update to the Xavier Files Mutant Master Rankings at CXF. A $25 donation lets you request a primer, one of our custom reading guides for a series, character, or creator, and a $50 donation lets you advertise on the show. You can also go to patreon.com/comicsxf to order copies of the ComicsXF zine, featuring some of the best articles from the history of the site. Digital copies are $10, physical copies are $15, and supplies are limited. Big thanks to our patrons: Kaylee Post, Nathan Elwood, Mark Danielson, Silas X, Jack Adams, Sean Shambly, Matt
McThorny,
Buddy Nooning, Jake Murray, Zach Quaintance, Joel Elod, Lisa Slack, Will Redman, Tobias Carroll, Liz Large, Asimov Fangirl, Carla Pacheco, and Shelf Dust. You're all special, and we love you. You can follow ComicsXF on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram at ComicsXF. Me at Daniel P. Grote on Blue Sky, and Matt Lazowitz at MattLaz1013 on Blue Sky. And until next week, remember, Batman co-creator Bob Kane's gravestone says the following: God bestowed a dream upon Bob Kane. Blessed with divine inspiration and rich imagination, Bob created a legacy known as Batman. Introduced in a May 1939 comic book, Batman grew from a tiny acorn into an American icon. A hand of God creation, Batman and his world personified the eternal struggle of good versus evil, with God's laws prevailing in the end. Bob Kane, Bruce Wayne, Batman. They are one and the same. Bob infused his dual identity character with his own attributes: goodness, kindness, compassion, sensitivity, generosity, intelligence, integrity, courage, purity of spirit, a love for all mankind. Batman is known as the Dark Knight, but through his deeds he walks in the light of a higher power, as did his creator, Bob Kane. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, in loving memory. With Bill Finger.